Hey, happy holidays, everyone, from the team here at NewOrleans.Football. Me, Sue, Mike, DJ, Kevin, everybody else is wishing you a happy holidays and hoping that you have a great holiday season. And we'll see what the Saints do this weekend. And hopefully the result of that game doesn't ruin too much for you guys. We got a good show for you today. We're going to talk about how the weather is going to impact that game, what they got to do to overcome it, how it might impact the passing game. Is it going to be run heavy? Is this Taysom Hill week? All that stuff is going to be discussed. And we also are going to go through a theoretical exercise where if the Saints were to enter a situation where they could only protect 5 players from an expansion draft, who are the 5 players that they should keep? So we're going to talk about all that and a whole lot more on today's show, coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio, which is also presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. That is an 86 proof blend of 3-year-old wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. It is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite bars, restaurants, anywhere that you buy liquor. Look for it there. It's the red bottle. It looks festive. Put it out there underneath the poinsettia, and you'll be good to go on Christmas Day when your friends and family come over. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And if you're doing any last-minute shopping, returning gifts after the holidays, you're up by the mall, Veterans Boulevard, check out our friends at Firehouse Subs. They do great stuff for the community, and they also make really good sandwiches. Try one of them out. You will not be disappointed. All right, let's get into the show. Winter is coming for everyone here in Louisiana and Cleveland, across the country, and it is also coming. It is also coming for the Saints this week. It's going to be a really, really interesting game to see how they play with all this wind, with all this cold, with all this weather. It's not normal for a team from the South. They aren't practicing.
It's not normal for anyone. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Like, we've even rolled our eyes a little at how many weather questions we've heard in the press conferences and in the locker room this week. And when you cover a team like the Saints, weather questions are overdone. Like, it's going to be 40 degrees. What are you going to do? Wear gloves? Andy Dalton was even joking. When I played for Cincinnati, we went to Baltimore, we went to Pittsburgh. Nobody ever asked, how are you going to deal with the weather? But if the weather forecasters are getting this one right, which they don't always do, we are talking like, as you said, winter is coming. Game of Thrones, north. Yep. They're playing this game north of the wall, potentially. Like conditions we haven't seen in any NFL game. Not even much worse than the Patriots-Bills game. That was the most fascinating game of the NFL season last year, when the Patriots won the game and they ran the ball 46 times on 49 offensive snaps. I'll be disappointed if we get cheated out of it now. Like, I'm fascinated to watch it.
That was one of the best games of the season last year. A lot of people thought it was boring, but the strategy behind it was just so fascinating. Belichick just knew what they weren't going to be able to do. They punted on the whole idea of trying to pass the ball. They tried only when they had to. Buffalo has Josh Allen. They got the cannon for the arm. They think, all right, this is built for this. We're going to be able to cut through it. They couldn't, and then they win just by running the ball. Just a totally fascinating game. I will say I agree with you. I think it's overrated. The talk of the cold and everything is too much. At some point, everyone's going to be out there. You got to deal with it. You got to get through it. A couple guys on the team did tell me, they're like, hey, this is going to be ass. Like, I don't want to go do this. It's going to be cold. I don't want to be part of this. I'm not ready for it. But once they get out there, there's no choice. You get ready for it. You play the game. When you catch the passes, it's going to hurt your hands. Like,
if there are any.
Yeah. People from the North, like, everybody goes out, like the holidays, you go out, you play football with your cousins and your uncles, and it's cold. And, by the end of it, everything hurts. There's a fight. Someone's getting punched, and everything hurts 10 times more because it is that much colder. But you got to go through it, and they'll get through it. It's the wind. The wind is going to be the factor in this game. That could be the thing that makes the whole thing just completely upside down. And it could be a game where you just really can't effectively throw the ball. And that's the thing that they're going to have to deal with. They're going to have to come up with plan A and plan B kind of for this game. And maybe it is just all plan B even, and you sprinkle in some plan A. But one way or another, things are going to be a little bit different than they usually are. How do you think they approach the game?
Well, look, I'd love to see them. I use the term full Taysom. I mean, if he's built for anything, is he not built for this? I wrote about it. And look, we'll find out. We'll find out if this is really a game where they have to run 95% of the time. And I'll believe it when I see it, because, a lot of times this stuff gets overblown. But if they are really like, we are running the ball, we're going to run it, then he's the ultimate weapon. Take Andy Dalton and Jameis. Forget the Dalton versus Jameis debate we've been having all season. Take them both off the field. Use the advantage where your quarterback is your running back and you get the extra blocker, and go ahead and let the other team try to stop the guy who's averaging a career high 6.5 yards a carry 6.6 yards per carry this season. I want to see a lot of Taysom. He's never had more than 14 carries in a game, which really surprised me when I researched his statistics. Let's shoot double it.
Yeah. I think they need to get more creative with it. And look, he's going to go through his whole career here. And our conversations, not our conversations, but the conversation at large has always been, they do too much with him. Why is he getting all these touches? They need to dial it back. They're getting too cute. And by the time his career comes to a close, the conversation and the real conversation and the real thing we're all going to be talking about is they didn't do enough with him. They didn't go crazy enough with him at quarterback. It was just too regular with a little bit of, stuff sprinkled on top, power runs on top of the regular offense. He moved to tight end and they didn't do enough with him there. Now he's in whatever he is now, kind of like a hybrid running back type, tight end type / fullback, whatever it is. They aren't doing enough there. They don't use him enough. They don't get creative enough with it. They need to line him up as a fullback some. Like, get him out on that swing pass in space to Adam Prentice and throw it to the guy that actually runs 4-4 that can run by people and through people and over people and be a weapon. Let him use his willingness to block in that area of the field. Hand off to him sometimes and let him get ahead of steam on a run. But in this game in particular, if they don't go to him and use him a heavy dose, it's going to be crazy to me. I won't understand it. He's the ultimate weapon, despite having 8.5-inch hands, which I think will be somewhat of a factor in this game. It's cold, bigger hands, you grip the ball better. That is something that could make him prone to fumbling a little bit. But I think you got to risk it and find out, because he really is kind of your weapon in a game where, okay, we can't throw the ball. All right, counter, Taysom. That needs to be your
He's got to be
move.
the X factor, because if you look at just about everything else in this game, it favors Cleveland. They're used to it. They're built for it. For the third straight year, they have a top 5 rushing offense. They've got Nick Chubb. They've got Kareem Hunt. They've got the offensive line. The Saints wanted to be built for this, but this is probably the thing I've written and talked about most, especially down the second half of the season. It hasn't come through. They haven't delivered on being this run-first team, especially in gotta-have-it situations where the other team knows you're going to run it. Now they're going to be without Cesar Ruiz, who was placed on injured reserve, although it looks like Andrus Peat might be able to play. He did make the trip despite being questionable with an illness. That would help, having Trevor Penning as a 6th offensive lineman. He might play every snap as a 6th offensive lineman if they really are going to run as much as we think they are. That'll help. But they're going to have one of probably their best rushing performance that they've had since Seattle. And one good thing, Cleveland, even though they're built for it on offense, Cleveland's run defense has surprisingly been really poor this year. They're like 30th in the league in rushing yards allowed per rush, 29th in rushing yards per game, 30th in DVOA. So there is an opportunity there. But on the flip side, how disheartening that the Saints used to have this great run defense. It was almost what became the strength of their team over the last few years. And that has really gone away this year. And we just saw it last week. Atlanta started running on every down, and the Saints couldn't stop it. I mean, you did a detailed film study on it.
Absolutely disheartening performance last week. And it was tough to watch when a team can just kind of impose their will on you and just run play after play after play after play. And I think Atlanta actually ended up in a better position when they got to a point in the game and they said, wait a minute, they can't stop our running plays, so why are we really passing the ball? And when they leaned into that heavily, trying to come back in the game, they're running the ball. They aren't even worried about trying to get down the field quickly. That was their best way to get down the field in a hurry, was running the ball, keeping the clock running, because those were their most effective plays, and their best chance of getting a home run was running the football, which is crazy. And now you go into a game where potentially you aren't really going to be able to pass the ball because forecasted winds are 30, 40 miles per hour. We'll see how that actually affects the game if it's getting into the stadium, if they're getting those gusts in there. If they are, passes out the window, you actually have to run. And now this forced circumstance is possibly the best game plan against this defense. Yeah. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how that plays out. Look, I do think that, some of this stuff, the weather, the elements, all that stuff does kind of favor Cleveland a little bit because they do actually exist in it. I think it gets talked about too much, but I think it's fascinating just over the years. You kind of look at teams in the AFC East and the AFC North, the NFC North. These teams, they draft and they build their teams differently to be fit for the elements. I think Kansas has a bigger priority up there. One thing the Patriots did is they prototyped that differently than other teams because if you got a bigger hand, you can grip on the ball a certain way, and then just being exposed to it. Like, it's just a real thing. We're down here in the South. We can stand outside in the heat for 3-4 hours, and it sucks, and you feel like crap at the end of it, and you need water and all that stuff, but you aren't going to pass out by the end of it usually. And if you're somebody coming from Wisconsin or Cleveland or wherever else, and you drop them down here on August 20th, and you make them stand outside in a non-shaded area for 3 or 4 hours, they're probably going to feel like they're dying by the end of it, and they're going to be a little disoriented. So that is a little bit of a factor, but how much, I think it is a little bit overrated to some degree.
It's not that overrated.
A little bit, a little bit.
Yeah, but all right. Well, speaking of where people are from, I grew up in Iowa. You've spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania, Boston. Give me your nightmare story. What's the worst weather experience you can remember?
Oh, we used to get ice storms in Pennsylvania all the time, and it would take out your power. There was one time we were without power for probably 10 days. We lived on this block where there was maybe 6 homes hooked up to the transformer, and the transformer busted, and they all busted. They all froze. They all busted all over, and they prioritize them much the same way as hurricanes here. If there's somebody on a transformer and it's a ton of people on it, you got a better chance of getting fixed sooner. So we were at the bottom of the list, and it was like 10 or 12 days, and it's 20, 15, 10 degrees outside, and you're just in the house trying to survive. And look, we weren't a family of means, so like going to a hotel or something like that wasn't an option. So we were literally just in there, all the clothes you could put on, blankets, and that was the only time in my life. Look, I didn't go to school at all. I got truancy fines. I got kicked out of high school at one point for not going to a school enough. That was the only time in my life where I was eager to go to school because that was the only way I could get in the heat.
I thought your answer was going to be earlier today when we had the real life planes, trains, and automobiles story where Nick is like he's routed out the car ride, and he's like, I won't, even if the roads aren't closed and we don't stop to go to the bathroom once, I won't get there before kickoff, so I can't drive.
It's frustrating.
And talking to your hookups who might, I know I can get you on a private jet, and the pilot said it's too dangerous to fly. This man is trying out here.
It's frustrating, man. Look, they like our whole website is funded by the readers. They're paying us to cover the team, to be at the games. It's a responsibility I never take for granted. I think they can see we invested in the product. We got Mike sitting here now. Like, none of that stuff's about, taking money and taking it for granted, and just not being at a game stinks. We'll still cover it. It'll still be the same level of coverage. It'll be Zooms, we'll still talk to everybody, but just like not physically being there when that's kind of, the expectation. It's it's bothersome.
Yeah, I bet. And that's true of any game. But I am fascinated to watch this one. Look, my weather experiences, you show me a ice scraper and I'm going to go into convulsions. Like it's like a bad memory from my past. Like the same as like that alarm clock. Like it's just, I'm in a bad, like I was joking earlier that when I was in college, like we had the building where I had a lot of my classes my junior and senior year, and there were like 10 parking spots out front. And if one of those wasn't available, I wasn't making it to class that day. It's tough to live in that stuff. But you did talk to some players who said, they're not looking forward to it. We also heard from some players who, I kind of like this perspective from some players that are looking forward to the uniqueness of this possible game. Jawan Johnson said, I'm going to retire one day and I'm probably going to be telling kids I played in this game. This is going to be a special memory. It's going to suck while I'm in it. And the other thing that was funny is I did not find one person who was like ready to talk about, I'm going to walk out there, sleeveless and looking forward to it. They were like, no, that's stupid. Like that'll slow down my heart rate before I play a football game. I'm going to wear the parka and I'm going to wear the scuba gear underneath and I'm going to wear everything it takes.
I asked James Hurst about wearing sleeves because I think there's like this stupid culture with offensive linemen where it's like, he has sleeves on, he's soft. Like I asked him about, he's like, Man, like if it's risky enough, like you should probably definitely wear sleeves. Like it's the stupidest thing they do. They're like, oh, we're gonna be so strong and macho, and it's like, no, dude, your arms are gonna hurt, and it's probably gonna affect like how much contact you go to on some subconscious level. Like put some sleeves on. Like it just seems a little bit smarter to go about things that way.
Vaseline and cayenne pepper was the one from that was a Mike McKenzie tip from when he played in Green Bay. I've heard a lot of Vaseline talk. Who knew?
Vaseline for the stop the win.
I guess.
That makes some sense on some level.
Yeah.
Is that legal,
I don't know
though?
why cayenne pepper. Vaseline and Tony Satchery sauce, maybe? I don't know.
Vaseline, wouldn't that like make somebody's hands slip off you a little bit? Is that legal? Is it a legal thing to do?
If it's illegal, the Saints will get busted for it.
$500,000 fine.
They'll lose they'll try to take their first round pick away from him next year, and they'll realize, oh, shoot.
DJ over here told me that he dumps hot water on his windows when they freeze. And I want to just tell everybody that's listening, as someone that grew up in the North, you do not do that. It will crack your windshield. You might get away with it once or twice, but you got to go out there. You got to scrape it. Do they even sell scrapers here? I don't think they sell scrapers here.
Yeah, I got one in my.
Oh, you use a credit card. You go to the credit card.
Well, no, actually, here's another tip. Don't use your good credit card. Use like the Blockbuster card that's still in your wallet.
Oh man. So what do you think for this game? Who are you picking? Who's your winner?
I think it favors the Saints that this game might be so random that it could be the equivalent of a coin toss. But Cleveland's a favorite for good reason. I mean, Cleveland's built for it. They're used to it. They've got the proven run game for it. But here's one fascinating element. The Saints' biggest detriment of this season has been questionable quarterback play. These two teams competed in the offseason for the right to, sell out their entire franchise to get Deshaun Watson at quarterback, and he might not matter in this game at all. So, I mean, if the weather forecasts are not overblown, which they sometimes are, but it does not seem like they are in this one. It is going to be run it, stop the run, punt it effectively, make a field goal. The Saints wanted to be the kind of team that could do that. You made a really good point earlier where you said last year you'd pick the Saints for sure in this game because those were all the things they were doing so well last year. They've lost their way a little bit. Maybe this is what they need to find it again.
I can't go with them just on the simple fact that we've seen them blow too many games. And you're telling me it's going to be a low-scoring, really close game. They're going to be battling. They're going to be fighting. Even last week they won. They found the way to make a play, and then offensively it's like, well, let's make sure they have one last chance to win the game. Let's give the Falcons an opportunity to steal this. It's a tough way to play. So until they prove that to me, these types of games are terrifying. They used to win these types of games. They used to be a team that found the way to win. Sort of like Minnesota. Like Minnesota is a good team. They always found the way to win. The Saints used to always feel like they found the way to win until, it was the playoffs and they found the way to some insane circumstance kind of knocked them out. But until they show they have that in their DNA, I can't buy it yet.
A complete aside here. I might be getting this stat wrong, but somebody just told me that last year the Vikings were 6-8 in one-score games, and this year they're 10-0 in one-score games. They're not that much a better team. We saw the Saints go against Minnesota earlier this year, and if you told me leaving London that those two teams were exactly equal, I would have believed you. Being able to win a game is a skill, or it's something that matters. And you're right, the Saints have not shown that this year.
There's some luck, and I think there's some mentality too.
Yeah.
Look, if you're a person on this team, the Tampa Bay game after they scored the first time, I guarantee there were some people standing around saying, "Here we go again. We're going to lose this game." We're all watching the game. We're saying they're going to lose this game. Those guys have been in that situations. You fail in it a few times. You start expecting to fail, and you probably find a way to fail. Minnesota, meanwhile, wins a couple. They get lucky against the Saints. Another game goes their way, and now the fifth time it happens, you're thinking we're going to win this game, and you find a way to win.
33-0. You're like, we're not losing. We don't lose.
Well, now what all you do is say, wait a minute, that's the guy on ESPN that was talking about me 3 weeks ago. Like, oh, we can beat them. But typically, though, I think it is a kind of a mentality, like where there's just kind of like a belief. And then when you have that belief, it probably just somehow things work out because you aren't playing like, things aren't going to happen for us.
We would be, if the weather wasn't such a factor, we'd probably have already talked by now about the fact that Chris Olave is ruled out. Jarvis Landry is on IR for the rest of the season. I guess the timing seems good if you don't really need your receivers that much in this game anyway. If this thing is a heavyweight slugfest, who are they going to miss more, Cesar Ruiz or Pete Werner?
Caesar. I think it's Caesar. Just the way they're going to play, it's going to be a run heavy.
And you're wearing a Pete Werner jersey under that sweatshirt too. So this is a big answer.
Come on, man. No, I think it's Caesar though, because it's going to be a run heavy game. He's someone that's played really well this season. His run blocking hasn't been as good as his pass blocking this year, but they're going to miss him. And then the step down, I think we've seen it. It's been significant all season long. It's going to hurt him in some base packages, not having Werner on the field. But if they get in the nickel looks and run the ball, Caden Ellis is actually the best run defender out of all three, DeMario included. And having him on the field in some of those situations could quietly kind of maybe be like a sneaky benefit in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I bet base packages might be the package. It might be the only package they're in the whole game.
That's a very good point.
So in that case, they would miss him. But yeah, just back to Cesar Ruiz for a minute, because we probably won't talk about him again this season now that he's on IR. What a disappointment. He was one of the bright spots of this season, after being one of the biggest question marks and almost already dismissed players heading into this season. So, his emergence is probably on a short list of the best things that's happened this year. But now a Liz Frank injury is no joke. I don't think, he'll probably be back in plenty of time for training camp, but a young developing player like that. And one of the big stories with Caesar was he didn't have a rookie offseason because of COVID. He didn't have that much of a second year offseason. Now he's going to have another interruption in another offseason. Injuries. We're talking about injuries all the time on this team, and it's whether it's an excuse or not, it sucks.
16 pressures the whole season for him. That's like less than half as a rookie. I mean, his climb this year was really surprising. I mean, he was one of the guys. If we would have had a podcast heading into the season and said, "Hey, let's predict next offseason's top needs," guard would have been one of them in his guard spot. Because I don't think a lot of us were expecting a lot from him. And I think it was kind of fair to be down on him a little bit. It is a good reminder, though, that you got to give these guys time to develop and maybe not jump to conclusions and feel like what I think now is solid and this is going to be it forever. Just say a guy needs to get better and kind of point it out, talk about it fairly. But you do have to leave room open for that growth. Hopefully they get the same ascension from Peyton Turner. Again, another spot where you're doubting it a little bit. You're looking at it kind of crazy, but it is possible. I'm not saying he will, but it is possible. Caesar's just kind of a good reminder of that patience, and he really went from one end of it to another. Doug Marrone, great impact on him. I think Zach Strief has been a great addition to the coaching staff. He's a good teacher. He knows how to talk to people. He knows how to break stuff down. But it's going to be a big loss for them, and I think not having him this week is going to be something that impacts the game.
How people get viewed early on in a microcosm this year. I think everybody kind of dismissed Tyrann Mathieu after he had some quiet games early in the season, but he was one of the more interesting things that you dug up, I thought, this week in your rundown. How well he's kind of sneakily been playing in recent weeks and what DA said about him.
Yeah, that was crazy, wasn't it? He said no mental errors the whole season that he could think of. I could think of a couple, but
I thought, yeah, I mean, we think we're him, but
yeah, you're right. Sometimes it's not, and we're wrong about these things every now and then. You make your best effort to dissect a play, but every now and then, like Deion Sanders just told a story this week about how he slapped a safety at a team meeting because he didn't respond to the film study the right way, and because the safety they were playing 2-man and the safety played it a certain way, so everybody that watched the play thought Deion got beat, but the safety was actually supposed to be over top, and he ended up smacking him in the face because he didn't like the reaction in the meeting room. But sometimes there is things that happen, and you could be looking at a play and say, "Oh, they're playing cover 3 here," but it is actually supposed to be 2 deep safeties or something like that. So you don't always know, but I do agree with some of the criticism of him that it's been not enough playmaking, that you expected a little bit more. I think that's true of everybody in the defense. So we thought when they shifted from Malcolm Jenkins and Marcus Williams to May and Tyrann, that it was going to be a more dynamic look at safety. And I don't think it has been that. But I do think the last 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks, Tyrann has been playing better. He's shown up positively more often. Me and you were talking about it live last week during the game. Like, he's really making some plays. He's making an impact. He's in the right places. You're noticing him positively a whole lot more. And it's showing up. And for DA to kind of say that, whatever you think of him, you could think whatever, but he is usually honest about his assessments of players. And when they're deserving of praise, he gives them praise. When they aren't, it's always kind of like, so you can kind of really tell who he's up on. It seems like he's really up on Tyrann, and I think we have seen enough to kind of support that a little bit.
Yeah, and Marcus May's coming along too, and just in general, the conversation you had with Marcus May about these guys are actually playing together for weeks at a time now. after the constant musical chairs that they've had in the secondary all season.
Yeah, look, these guys, it's chemistry. Like knowing how one guy plays and how he might respond to a post route, and you're watching it from the deep safety area, is going to dictate how you react. And you might know somebody's range a little bit better. And if this guy has some range, you can cheat over here based on a look or something like that. But when it's guys coming in and out and the safeties are kind of learning how to play with each other, and then the cornerbacks are injured and you don't know how to play with this guy or how to communicate with him, it's just a little bit of a process. And then his Achilles as well for Marcus May. It's something that kind of held him back early. And as the season's gone on, he's gotten healthier and healthier. He's making a lot more plays. I really liked what he did a couple of weeks ago in run defense. It was crazy. He looked really good. So maybe there is some hidden positivity in this secondary as the season comes to a close. It hasn't been what it was supposed to be. It's been disappointing, but at least there's some positive trends. They got to play it out. They got to show it. But maybe that spot isn't as dire as we thought it was going to be kind of maybe a few weeks ago.
All right, let's look to the future.
The future.
Yeah, fun exercise we came up with today. And an important one, because this team is going to decide how much of its core to keep together this offseason, how many of these guys they're building that are future cornerstones, that what they do over this next month matters because they're part of the core of this team going forward. So contracts, age, size of contracts, everything counts. There's an expansion draft next year, and you only get to protect 5 players, and no one's taken from my team. These 5 are going to be part of 2023 and beyond. Who are your 5? Give me your number one first.
I want to let's lay out a parameter here.
Yeah.
Let's kind of define how we're both approaching this. Our mindset. There's 2 ways to go about this. Are you protecting the youth? Well, there's 3 ways. Are you protecting the youth? Are you kind of looking at it like I'm fine if I get forced into a rebuild if I lose all my guys, or are you kind of trying to play a little bit of both?
You'll find out when I go through my answers.
All
But
right.
that's exactly what you have to wrestle with. I mean, we're not going to just pick Cam Jordan, Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk, Marshawn Lattimore. We're not just picking the all pros because those guys, DeMario Davis would be those would probably be the 5 you'd pick if, you're just like listing who are the most 5 accomplished players on the team. And we're also not going to pick the guys we'd want to win a game with tomorrow or for the final 3 weeks of this season. These are the guys I want to make sure no one else has, because they need to be a part of no matter what my plan is going forward.
So my number one, any approach, any of the 3, the one guy I'm keeping before anybody else on the team, every single time, every single exercise, just given youth, age, talent, upside, all that, Chris Olave. And I think he's probably number 1 on your list. I think he's probably
DJ's list.
number 1 on DJ's list. He's number 1 on probably everybody's list that's listening to this. He's the building block of the offense moving forward.
He has a chance. He would have a chance to be in the top 5 if it was just, no contracts, no age. We're lining up to play a game next month, and you can pick 5 players to go into that game with. He's a consideration, but when you consider the potential and the long-term security of his deal, he's the biggest no-brainer in this exercise.
There's no maybe there for me.
Yeah.
He is that guy. And we'll see if they miss him this week being without him. It's kind of a weird game. So if he has to miss one, this isn't terrible. Who's your 2?
I'll go the opposite direction then. It's not just the 5 young players for me. I'm going Marshawn Lattimore. We just talked about if this exercise, I can go back and replay 2022 with any guys, obviously he'd probably be number 1 on the list. But he is still just like 26 years old. And even if you decide, we're going for a total rebuild, and his contract is big, well, then trade him for a first-round pick. You've made this point. I think Chris Olave and Marshawn Lattimore are probably the only 2 players you could trade for a first-round pick. So I want him on my team. He's an important player. If not, he's probably the best asset I've got on my team.
Yeah, no question. And he is young. So he even fits. He's on every list that you do through here. You have to protect him, and it's the value. And even if you got to pay him, he's going to probably play through his next contract and give you that value because he is young and he's going to remain good. It's just, does he stay motivated? I think that's the main thing with him is just kind of his buy-in on everything and how, if he can show up every single week. He did last year. This year he's been hurt. He was playing well before the injury. So we'll kind of see how that goes next year.
He's on your list, though? He would have been on your list.
Absolutely. Every single version of the list. My next guy, Pete Werner, I think he's going to be...
We're 3 for 3.
Centerpiece of the defense, young, ascending. And again, 3 guys in a row, I think. Any version of this list, those guys are making that list, just kind of where they're at and I think he's going to be somebody that's a foundational piece of the team.
I agree. Now, Caden Ellis is interesting because he is an undrafted free agent. I don't think we would probably put Caden Ellis in our top 5 just yet, even if they had him for 3 more years under contract. But he could rise alongside him. But Pete Werner's the clear foundational piece who I think is still just sort of scratching the surface of how good he can be, and he's already pretty special. So 3 for 3 for me there. But the fourth, so I would have gone with 2 young players in my top 3. That's actually my top 3. Actually, I think it gets tougher after those 3. But the fourth, I'm going to go older again, and I'm going to say Alvin Kamara. I would not be shocked, and I wouldn't blame the Saints if they want to explore the idea of possibly trading him this offseason. But if they trade him, he's another one who I think you'd get some valuable assets in return. Not a first-round pick, not the Christian McCaffrey haul, but something real. He's still a special player who's still got a couple years left in his prime. And if they do keep him, I think the top priority for whoever is running this offense next year is quarterback, and number 2 right behind it is figure out how to do a better job with Alvin Kamara. He's got to be what makes this offense go.
So taking this exercise probably far too literally, the idea of an expansion draft means that we're opening up holes on a team and you have to fill them. I let Alvin go because I think no matter what, if you keep him, you have to draft his replacement.
Sure.
You're not going to have him beginning of the season, probably suspended. Given his age, you're going to need a running back. So kind of just taking it through like a very literal lens of this, that's how I would approach it. Now I'm of the belief of this team being able to kind of be close, come back, compete, win the NFC South. I think he would be a big part of that, even if he does miss some games to start next year. So under those circumstances, I'd probably keep him. But for the purpose of this, I'll let him go. The other thing, too, you mentioned if the team wants to explore trading him. If I'm Alvin, I might not be totally opposed for that. Now, this is just me speaking for Alvin, as Alvin through his eyes, if I were him, like how I would feel about the situation. I would be frustrated because I feel like the version of this offense that's been out there
this year, yeah.
Not even this year, last year, too. I mean, these last 2 years, I think, have taken him out of the Hall of Fame discussion. I think that he was somebody that was on that path that was almost looked surefire for a little bit. It looked like they got 2 of them in 2017, and I think maybe things have changed a little bit for both Marshawn and Alvin. Mike Thomas, too. It looked like they had 3 guys that were on that path. Ramczyk, too, just with how quickly he was recognized, and I think they're all off it. But Alvin feels like the guy that should still be kind of going after it. There's not been injury or anything like that. It's just kind of circumstance, and the offense is inability to get him the ball. I would be irritated, and I would maybe look at where I'm at. What is he, 27? He's 27. So
I'd have to look that
he's
for sure.
He's later in his career. He's got a couple probably really good years left, and then it starts to downturn. I would maybe want to get somewhere where I can know for sure that I'm going to be used every single play in a certain way. I would be mad if I were him.
I just got distracted for a second when you threw that question at me because I just realized Trey Hendrickson is the only member of the 2017 draft class who made the Pro Bowl this year.
Oh, man. Yeah, if they won some more games, they'd all be in there, though. If they were winning games, like Alvin would get in there, just kind of off of being a face of the league. Well, yeah, I mean, but yeah.
One other thing you brought up about Alvin, though, that you mentioned on the last pod, in case people missed it, is he's admittedly not completely free of blame in his pass protection issues. And we've talked about the team should probably take players off the field when they commit a false start or a fumble. It really feels like there were some obvious situations last week that are like, how are you not going to Alvin Kamara on 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4? And he wasn't on the field on those situations. So he's not completely without blame, but whatever it is that they've got to correct in his game and whatever it is that they've got to put him in better situations, more screen passes. As you've been screaming to the rooftops, you had a really interesting thing in this year's rundown about his numbers when they used to use him more in the slot, which Kevin suggested they should do more. Figure it out.
Yeah, it was 4% of his plays in the slot this year. Other years it was high as 15, 16%. Last year was, I think, 9, which was Sean at the helm. So it's something that's kind of went down over time, but it's been less creative than ever. And every single week, I'm sitting here thinking about how they're using Alvin, why isn't he involved. I'll start looking at stats. I'll start looking at my notes. I'll start looking at, my breakdowns and stuff I've charted and start going through it and putting it together. And every single week I find something new that just says they aren't being creative enough with him. So whatever they do this offseason, whether it's bringing in a new OC, whether It's setting Pete Carmichael down and grabbing him, by the shirt and just kind of shaking him and say, hey, like, you guys have to use
that
this
seems
player.
Extreme. That seems extreme. Well, you didn't have to shake him.
It's an extreme situation. Like somebody just needs to kind of, jack someone up and say, hey, this is Alvin Kamara. He is the best player on our team. Get him the ball. I don't care how it's done. And it has to change. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a change on the offensive staff just because it's going to be pressure on DA. And I think that continuing down the same path, I don't think that's going to be something that's palatable. And something does have to change one way or another, fair or not. But whoever is making those calls next year, Alvin has to be the centerpiece of the offense.
All right, so you're not taking Alvin. You've got your 4th spot.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Alontae Taylor. I think he's ascending, really good player. I think he can be a very, very good number 2 corner. We'll see, over time. It could be kind of fool's gold a little bit. It's one of those positions where small samples can kind of just sway everything. He hasn't picked off a pass yet. We saw how close he was last week. His passer rating against is like 58.5, but you get a couple picks there and all of a sudden he has the lowest number in the league for rookies. Flip side, you give up 2 touchdowns and that number inflates without any interception. So it's kind of like riding a narrow rail right now for him. But if he can prove that this is something, he's somebody that I would want to keep around. And I think he's someone that other teams would probably try to come in and take right away. So I would probably expose another player before him.
Yeah, I mean, without question, he's on a short list of the young, positive building blocks that were one of the encouraging things about this season. And whatever their plan is going forward, he's a big part of it. He did not make my list, but he's right on the verge. I'm going to go with somebody who's sort of in between young and old, and it's Eric McCoy, because I need to represent the offensive line on here. I mean, it's kind of crazy, all the investments on the offensive line. We talked about Cesar Ruiz's growth. You could make a case for him after what he showed this year. You could make a case for Ryan Ramczyk, even though, the injury concern and the miles on him, and the fact that he's already making close to $20 million a year is the only reason why, you'd consider the younger, cheaper guy ahead of him. But Eric McCoy is kind of the best of everything. They got a really nice contract extension done with him earlier this season. He's been playing some of his best football when healthy, just as a blocker, as an athletic blocker who can move. And, everything he does as a signal caller at center is so important. And we have seen how much they've missed him when he's not the guy doing it.
I just sat here through that whole thing, just nodding along to what you were saying, but I'm thinking in my head, like trying to come up with like someone creative or off the wall or different. And there's nobody on the defensive line that I'm protecting. There's nobody else at linebacker.
I'd protect Cam if it was like a 1-year protection, but
yeah, we're building that.
He's obviously being shortchanged because
of
his age, and
there's nobody at linebacker that I'm I'm dying because just age, circumstance. I'm not keeping anybody else in the secondary. I would have probably a year ago, if we were doing this, CJ would have been on my list probably somewhere. Just as a young guy that's kind of could be a building block, but there's nobody else within that group that I'm dying to keep or I'm scared of losing. There's nobody else at wide receiver. Rashid Shaheed's like an honorable mention. Juwan Johnson's an honorable mention, but I'm okay with trying to replace them a little bit. So working down the list, just to go a little bit different than you, I guess I'd keep Taysom. Just throwing a guy out there. Yeah, keep him on the team.
If we do this again after he runs 21 times for 80 yards in the 6-0 win over Cleveland.
The new OC thing, there's not a quarterback worth keeping. Things could get a little bit dire. You're probably going to need to be weird on offense coming out of this if you can't get your quarterback in the offseason. So I think Taysom's kind of a guy that you keep just around so that there's something that you can do. Speaking of, coming into this game, first series of the game, the Rams game, they flip quarterback to quarterback to quarterback, quarterback. I would go Taysom, snap 1, Alvin Wildcat, snap 2, Taysom, snap 3, Alvin Wildcat, snap 4. Be weird, kind of try to blitz him off the field, get a touchdown early. And if you can steal a drive in this game, it might be the thing that wins you the game.
The only problem with you don't need to protect Taysom because everybody else in the league, who else is taking him? I've been told by many people
Sean
on
Payton.
Twitter that Taysom Hill is a joke. Oh yeah, that is true.
Sean Payton's
That's who you have to protect him from. All right, DJ, did we miss anyone to be in your top 5?
I have Olave 1, Marshawn, Pete Werner, Alontae, and AK.
All right, he dipped into both of our lists.
All right.
That seems like the core.
Yeah.
That might be that they had the most votes.
And if you're looking for voiceover work, DJ's auditioning to be Batman over there with the scratchy throat. So shout out to DJ. Weather sucks. working while not feeling 100%. Appreciate it. We got anything else? Is that it?
Yeah. What about holiday shopping? NewOrleans.Football.
/subscribe, 20% off first payment with the code HOLIDAY. If you like the Saints, if you want to see how they're going to rebuild, or if you just want to buy me, Mike, a Christmas gift, that's a good way to do it. Buy a subscription, treat yourself. You help us out. We need your support to keep doing what we're doing.
Don't undersell this. This is like the perfect gift. How many times are you sitting there like, A, I can't think of anything, and B, I don't want to go anywhere. Yeah. This is a unique idea. Someone's going to think, oh, they really thought of me. They know how much I love the Saints and how much I've been hurting this year and how much I need to read about how they're going to fix things.
And here's the thing.
You don't have to go to the mall.
Right. And we're recording this on December 23rd. So
which means
if they're listening
you've forgotten people.
Yes, yeah, you forgot about somebody. If you're listening to this and you're sitting there, you're saying, oh, damn, that is a good idea. So we're there in that moment of need. So that's the perfect thing. And they won't know. Print out the logo. Send us an email. We'll send you the logo. You can print it out, write your name on it. Say, to Dad, I actually do love you, and I thought of you. Aunt Sally, I know you love Chris Olave. Now you can read more about him. Whatever you got to do. But we appreciate all the support. And again, happy holidays from all of us here at NewOrleans.Football. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll be back after the Browns game.